strong he is. Look at RIO MITCHAM go! United States take the gold. Brilliant performance for the bronze medal behind France.
In the end, we only regret the chances we don't take. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Athlete Podcast sponsored by Sports for Champions. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Team GB sprinter RIO MITCHAM. How are you today, RIO?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. Pleasure to have you on.
Yeah.
If we could start right at the beginning, how did you first get into athletics?
Yeah, so I was always like the fast kid in school. We used to have like races in the playground like every lunchtime, or if like a new kid comes to the school they have to race the quick kid. So like we always had that kind of little culture, but then on sports day I remember I won. I think it was like year 5 or 6, and then my parents were like, oh, we should take you to the track to have to like do some training sessions. So I went down to the track, joined the Telford Athletics Club, my local club, and then went from there. Kept training at that club until I went to uni, and then just like progressed through.
That's
like
brilliant. I mean, everyone, there's always got that one or two fast kids in school. We were always sporty growing up.
Yeah, so I played football growing up, as well as doing track after I joined. And I loved playing football. Like I always played with my brother and in the park. And then I played for a club like up until I was like 14, I think. I had trials at a few places but never really made the cut. And then so at that point I was like, you know what, maybe athletics is my thing. I'll just be the fast kid for now.
There you go. It's worked out well, to be fair. And what sort of distance were you running at that time?
So I started off just doing 100 meters and 200 meters, and then only recently in the last few years I went up to 400 meters, so I could really feel the pain of the sport. So in some ways I do miss them good days doing the short distances, but it's all good.
The 400 meters looks to me to be one of the most difficult races, because it's sort of sustaining what for me would probably be a sprint or all out, probably even quicker than that, but sustaining that for such a long time. Is that kind of known in the sport as being one of the most difficult sort of distances?
Yeah, that's what, like when I just did 100 meters, I would never run around the whole track, not even on a warm-up lap. But now it kind of feels like, because on 100 and 200 or at 200 less so, but in 100 you just run into the finish line, one line to the other. But then 400 meters there's a bit more tactics, and like you can do this here, do that there, push here, push there, and like your competitors are around you. So it kind of, to me, feels more fun. Like there's more to it, and more like, I don't know, more things to talk about and brag about, rather than for 100 you run from one line to the other really quick. But so like the tactics kind of thing I find really fun, and like especially when I just threw myself in the deep end and just started doing the event, getting things wrong and making mistakes and like having to trial and error it was like weirdly fun. How
aware are you of the other competitors in the race?
I'd like to say not aware at all, but there's been a few instances, especially when I first started, that guys would zoom past me and I'd be like, oh my god, what's just happened? But for me, like I like say there is like a British Champs last year, there was a few people that were ahead of me in the race when I came onto the home straight, and then to be able to like chase them down and have something to chase when everyone's tired and fatiguing can be beneficial. So as long as you use it to your advantage, which hopefully I continue to do, then can be a good thing.
I can imagine it must be tricky. Say for example, if you set out with a game plan that you're not going to push until the end, and then people start going past you, and then to stick to that game plan, it must take quite a lot of sort of resilience.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that I need to like continue learning, because I'm obviously right at the start of my journey in the event, but I need to stay focused on like keeping my race plan, executing that as well as possible, and that's how I'm going to get the best performances out of myself.
So you said you were sort of after an amazing sports day performance that your parents took you down to the Telford Athletic Club. How was that adjustment going from running in the schoolyard to then competing against other people who are also minded to push on in the sport? Yeah.
A weird thing is that it almost feels really similar. I probably felt just as nervous lining up against the kid in the year above me in school as I do now. And I think like one of the best ways for me anyway, to see the sport is that like I'm literally just running around a track and someone's timing me to do the whole thing. And it can't be that serious. Like I'm literally just running someone reads me a time, I'm either happy with it or I'm not. And like for me, that takes away some of the stress about it, and I can have a bit more fun and like not have to, it's not life or death, not have to worry about it in that sense. Like just run as fast as you can.
It's funny, the sport should be fun, really, at all levels. Obviously, the higher you get, the more competitive you get, so the fun can kind of be lost a little bit. When you first join the athletics club, does it instantly become about improving every week, or is there still kind of that fun element?
No, so we the club that I joined anyway in Telford, it basically worked out. So when you're younger, you do a mix of events to find out what you enjoy and what you're good at, and then hopefully what you're good at you enjoy. And then for me, like when I realized that I liked sprints, I joined like this coach who specialized in the sprints for the kids. And then so from there I started doing sprints. But there's definitely more of a, because in athletics there's such a range of events you can there's definitely more of a range of what you can do. So then when I got a little bit older, I just started going to the gym with my friends, and then as most teenagers do, I just wanted to get bigger. So even at that point, I was going to the gym with my friends, doing bench press, which my coach now doesn't let me even do. So it defo, there's a point where it starts to get serious, and for that point it changes for different people, which is fine. But for me, I defo continued having fun, as much fun for as long as possible.
Do you remember the first moment where you realised I can actually take this professional?
Honestly, no. Like, I've always had this belief in me for some reason. Even when I was playing football, I felt like I could be a footballer until like I couldn't. I've always had this like vision of me being an elite sports person, and I don't know if it came from my parents. I'm not 100% sure, but I do remember like I am a person who like idolizes a lot of people, and I'm inspired by a lot of people, and like specifically in athletics, watching Usain Bolt as I was growing up, like I always felt like I belonged in his shoes and we're on the same start line. So I've just always envisioned myself in higher heights than I am right now.
Did you catch any of London 2012? Because I think you'd have been about 13, which would have been sort of when you're just finding your feet and starting to race. Did that have an impact?
Well, unfortunately I didn't go to watch any of it in person, even though it was in London, but through the TV screen and like the buzz that you felt in the country as a 12, 13-year-old, like I think that defo had an impact in like a lot of us that were coming up in the sport at the same time. And just I think being a kid during like the reign of Usain Bolt, you can't compare that to anything else really.
And then from there, presumably at some point Team GB comes knocking. How does that work? So I switched events to 400 meters. I'd made like a couple like teams for GB as a junior, but it was just like in the country. I'd never actually I made the relays, but I never actually ran, that type of thing. So like I'd had the kit and I'd had a little feeler as a teenager, but I'd never done anything that had really like satisfied me. So in 2022, so I'd been doing 400 meters for like a couple of years, and it started picking up a teeny bit, and then I kind of got a little bit of a buzz of like, oh, you know what, maybe I could make this team, or maybe I could make this team. And then I went to British Championships and then really stepped my game up, and then got a bronze medal. And then that for me was like a really big day of like, you know what, like you can't ignore me anymore, like I'm here. And then at that point it was like, okay, this is what I think I can aim for. And then eventually made the European Championships team for the 4x400 meter relay. I just got a call. I was actually in bed, rolled over, saw it, and I was like, oh my god, I think I know what that is. And then woke up, tried to make sure my voice wasn't groggy, and then and then called my dad straight away, told him the news. But I really remember that really vividly. I'm guessing being around the team and then being around these events, it was an amazing education for someone as young as you were. What would you say would be the steepest learning curve?
Learning curve wise in my career?
Once you joined up with Team GB.
Really just like how like professional other people take it, and like even just sitting around a dinner hall and having normal conversations with people, and them talking about training and other athletes and what they look at. Like there's a lot more focus on things that I wouldn't have thought of before, and I like to just pick up little things from people. Like, I'm always listening, always trying to learn. So like, just general conversations, when I hear little glimpses of things, that I pick up on it quite well.
Yeah. And then in terms of your training, how has that evolved over the years?
So I do a lot more 400 meter training now.
Of course,
like a lot more longer stuff. But then also, like, the older I've got, and the more that there could be other avenues that I follow, like, to stick to this dream that I had as a 10-year-old is like really important for me, and I don't want to lose sight of that. So like, a lot of the time in training, like, I remind myself of like why I'm doing this, that I can do this, and that, like, just to chase that dream for as long as possible. So like, having little tricks and little things that like make my mindset directed towards that way, like, I find useful.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of how you keep yourself on track. But what motivates you to keep pursuing that initial dream? Yeah,
honestly, right now, like, I value having discipline way more than motivation. Like, the days that I'm not motivated and the days that I am motivated look exactly the same. I do exactly the same stuff, behave the same way, carry myself the same way. But like, weirdly, that the vision that I had when I was in school and just trying to run away from the other kids in school, I still have that, and it's still really alive. And yeah, I don't, everywhere I go, that vision's still there. So yeah.
You touched on it really briefly then. What does a day look like for you?
So I go to training. I run my heart out. My coach kills me off a little bit. I try and recover as best as possible. And then normally, so I make music with my brother. And like, I spend a lot of my time just like listening to beats, zoning out, like writing music, making music. And like, that for me is like a really good downtime. It takes my brain away to a different place. I don't think about anything else. So for me, like, for years, that's what I've spent my time doing.
It's so important. We speak to a lot of athletes, and we kind of tend to touch on some of the hobbies they might have, and so many don't have any because it's just so all-consuming what they're doing. How do you keep music and sort of athletics separate in your head, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So like, for like training wise, like, sometimes I have lyrics popping around my head, and I do try and focus on the training as much as possible. But for me, I've always looked up to musicians my whole life, and I've always looked up to athletes my whole life. So for me, being able to be in a position where I can call myself a musician and I can call myself an athlete, why not do both? Like, I feel like there's no one else really in my position right now, especially in the country, who wins medals and makes songs about them. So I do want to push that, and like that's what I enjoy the most. Like, I enjoy both the two. So like, I like putting them together, and for me, like, the coolest rappers that I always looked up to as a kid and the coolest sprinters are quite similar. Like, they have that way of carrying themselves, and like, the sprinters wore gold medals, the rappers wore the gold chains. Like, for me, they cross over. So like, I want to be that person flying the flag in the UK, and I think I can be.
That makes sense. Don't doubt you for sure. In terms of nutrition, how's your approach changed as you've kind of become more professional?
So main way it changed is my mum stopped cooking for me when I moved to uni. So I think at that point, like, I did sports science at uni. So like, fortunately, I learnt about nutrition through like education quite thoroughly. So I do have quite like an innate knowledge of that now. So I think, which helps with my athletics quite a bit, because just like, I think understanding food is the most important part. So then you don't have to have the as much like anxiety around tracking calories and like this and that, because you kind of know what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating, and when it's okay to eat what, and that type of thing. So yeah, I do like to keep it. I think, well, in everything, I think happiness takes like the forefront, and for me, like, I don't want to get too uptight about anything. So I don't like to put too much pressure on that, saying that I do eat really clean naturally anyway, and I enjoy it, and like, I enjoy cooking, so it's not as hard for me. But yeah, just having knowledge on it, I think, is the most important part.
Definitely. I think the more education around food types and different meals, and Often people don't really think about the timings of meals.
Yeah.
So like on a race day, how would that work for you?
Yeah, so I normally eat like around 2 to 4 hours before. Yeah, like I eat like quite a big meal, yeah, like 4 hours before, and then maybe top up a little bit in between. There has been seasons where I've had like specific ritual meals like beforehand, and like my housemates will be like, oh, he's racing tomorrow, he's cooking this. But yeah, I do like to keep it, just to say you're staying in a hotel and there's not specific foods and you need to adapt to what you have. Yeah, I don't want to fall into habits of, oh, I need to have this, I need to have that. I think there was one that Michael Phelps interview I listened to one time. It might have been his coach, where he was saying like he sometimes hides items of his before a race, or like he'll misplace this, and then Michael has to adapt every race, and there's not always something that's specific. And yeah, I do think that's kind of similar with that.
Do you have a sort of cheat meal after a good performance?
Yeah, I've got a big sweet tooth. And like I'm not even like a chocolate or sweets guy, I'm just at everything. But yeah, after performance you feel like a little bit you've warranted it a little bit, so I could have a couple sweets here and there. I've normally got like a new favorite each season that I keep in my bag, so yeah, they get munched on the way home.
What's the go-to this season?
I'm not sure this season. Last season it was Haribo's giant straws, you know them big straws?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
They were banging.
Big fan.
Yeah.
So we touched on Usain Bolt earlier, but did you have any other major influences, or perhaps like a sporting hero growing up?
Yeah. I've like always looked up to Kobe Bryant, and I've probably listened to every interview, everything that he's done. There's some that I've listened to over and over again, and yeah, like I really value his words and like what he brought to sport, not just basketball. Like I've never played basketball at all, but he's been such a big influence on me. Yeah, so he's the main one really.
Do you have a favourite sporting quote?
Sporting quote, off the top of my head, I can't think of any. But there's a quote that I follow from one of my favourite artists, Jay-Z. Like I went to a Jay-Z concert when I was like 12, my first one, and after that like I fell in love with his music and all the music that surrounded it. So he's been a really big like idol in my life. And there was one concert where he said, don't ever go with the flow, be the flow. And like in training and competing, sometimes it feels like you can just fall into a pattern of like you do this week and this week this day, and like make sure your arms do this and your legs do this, and then but I think it's important to realize that you're an individual, and especially in a sport where there's thousands of people just running in a straight line, you need to somehow be the person that stands out. And like yeah, not going with the flow, be the flow always just resonates in my mind.
Yeah, that's great. We've all seen plenty of fast kids growing up, and they definitely don't all turn out to be sprinters. How many kids did you say that would be as talented as you were, who maybe haven't reached as high as you have?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because there's defo they could go into other sports, or like you go through school and then you just end up in a like a certain job field, and then you stick to it and you're good at it and you might enjoy it. For me, I think it's different because I've never pictured myself in like any office, or I've never pictured myself like working any other job other than running or making music. So like I've never even seen any other option. So for for other people who ran fast and then are really successful in other fields, like that's perfect. But I've just never seen that like future in my life. And athletics is a tricky one because there might not be as many opportunities as there are in other sports, and maybe other sports like football, there's millions of people across the country doing it. But yeah, so to stick at something for so long and have this belief might be harder for some people. But for me, for some reason, it just makes sense.
I think what we hear so often is it comes down to who's willing to put the work in. What would you say is more important to make a good athlete, hard work or talent?
I would say defo hard work. I mean, obviously, like talent plays a big part. And at the same time, if you're not happy doing the thing that you're working hard at, you're not going to be doing it well. Like happy runners run fast, happy throwers throw far. Like, so yeah, if you're not happy in the sport that you're in, and you can't work hard, and then you can't succeed. So you need to enjoy it at the start anyway.
I used to ask a question about sacrifices, but I think the more people we interviewed, we kind of realised that people didn't see what we might think as a sacrifice, because as you said there, they love it so much, so it doesn't feel like that. Is there anything in your life maybe that you'd feel like you've given up on that you'd have liked to do more of, or you just tunnel vision?
There's nothing that I'd like to do more of. It's a lot of time, and like time's obviously really valuable, and like you spend a lot of time training or even just putting yourself in the mindset of competing and putting your mindset into being an elite performer. It takes a lot of, like, you have to connect with it, and that takes a lot of time, in which like other people now have it free to do other things if they're not focused on this. Obviously I'm happy to give it away and dedicate that to the sport. I can maybe say I would like to have a couple more beers every now and then, but yeah, mainly just that it like takes like these years of my life of being dedicated to this. Hopefully it pays out.
Do you think the life of an athlete is tough compared to other professions?
Nah. Like, I mean, I always think like I wish I could see other people put the work that we put into it, and like when you're on the floor and you literally can't give anything else and you figure out some way to get back up. I would like to see other people get put into that situation and see how they deal with it. But also at the same time, like a lot of the things that athletics teaches you, and like a lot of the qualities like discipline, everything else that you get from just working this hard, I think can easily translate into other jobs, and I'm sure other people get from other jobs and they can translate it to athletics. But yeah, I do think it's like a really good, like working hard in athletics is a really good way to set you up for all different types of life.
And what the biggest challenge you've faced in your career?
I'd say injury. Up to now, like I'm quite a long, gangly person, which is like my has helped me in many ways, but in other ways, like yeah, I've had quite a few injuries in the sport, starting from like a younger age, and yeah, just like learning how to manage them and work around them has been like the biggest challenge. But going through that has made me such more of a stronger person than I was before, and like I would have thought I am at this point. And yeah, like I mean, obviously I don't want anyone to get injured. I don't want to get injured myself, but like going through them and surpassing them problems has made me the athlete that I am now, and I don't think I would have been that without them.
So if you get a fairly serious injury, say it puts you out for 12 weeks, how big of an impact will that have on your season or for your trajectory at that time? Yeah,
quite a big impact for that short-term goal. But like for the long-term goals of what people want to do in the sport, obviously it depends on the timing. But yeah, in the long term, if you have the belief that you can always come back, there's been so many instances where people have came back, and it takes like a lot of bravery. Like there was one time a couple of years ago, I write poems in my spare time also, and I wrote a poem about being like a brave idiot is what I felt like at the time, and I wasn't sure if I was being an idiot or if I was being brave. Like if you get injured however many times and you're not learning from your mistakes properly, are you just brave and you come back and you fight the fight, or are you an idiot? And that level of like delusion is something that's quite important in sport. You need to be deluded to make it to the heights that other people don't think that they can reach. So yeah, I think learning that you are brave, but also learning from your mistakes is a good thing.
It's funny you say that, because I was actually going to ask, when you come back from an injury, is it in the back of your head? But it sounds like you're just headstrong. You just didn't think about it and just carry on doing what you're doing.
I think as long as you like as long as you know that you're learning from it, and you actually like, as if it was a lesson, like you could tell someone what you've learned about it, and then I think, yeah, you're fine when you come back. If you haven't learned anything and you just come back and you're miraculously better, yeah, maybe you need to look at what's gone on, what you can learn from it if there's nothing obvious.
Yeah. It sounds like mindset is almost equally as important to you as your own athletic ability.
Yeah, and I think that like comes back to like I think in sport you can choose to be happy. Like there's a lot of times I could hear Kobe Bryant say like you need to get up and do this training, or like, oh, we're not happy because the job's not done, or blah blah blah. There's that famous quote where he's like sitting there and he's like, job's not done. But sometimes just be happy. Like sometimes, yeah, the job's not done, but I've got to live the rest of my life. I've got to see my family. I've got to see my friends. Like, let's just be happy. Let's carry on and smile about it. So yeah, that always is like the priority for me in sport, as much as like I want to be as quick as possible and I want to be as blah blah blah. Like, I need to do that and be happy at the same time.
Do you stay happy on a race day?
Yeah, I try and smile. My brother used to tell me, I don't know where he got it from, but when I do like exams in school, he would be like, smile at the paper. I don't know if he got it from a teacher, but he would say it as in like, if you smile, you'll perform better. So on race day, even if it's just like to myself, I try and like just smile. As soon as I see my friends or family in the crowd, I try and smile at them. And like, yeah, just if you keep that positivity, for me, you just do better. And yeah, so I just smile.
Do you get nervous?
Yeah, I get nervous. There's in races, like, there's a weird like comfort feeling about it. Like, you've been there so many times at this point that like I do feel relatively comfortable wherever I am. Like, it's the same start line. But yeah, I do get nervous. But then as soon as like you're there, I just kind of feel. I don't know, it's natural. Like, I've been here. Like, as soon as you walk through the door at home, you've been there. Even if you were nervous, that's kind of what it feels like most of the time.
I guess that's what the training's for, isn't it? To take away some of that.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
go into autopilot. And
Yeah,
just
yeah.
perform basically. Pre-race, are you somebody who just kind of listens to music to hype yourself up, or are you just trying to calm yourself down?
Yeah, I listen to music. I don't listen to anything that's gonna shout at me in my ears. Funnily enough, most of the time I listen to myself. I listen to my own music because a lot of the time it's like me telling myself something. It feels like self-talk, but I don't have to do it. And like, I've got a few songs that are like more uplifting and more like, some of them are about athletics. So I listen to them, and then it's just like I can hear myself telling me things that I need to hear. Yeah, so as like obnoxious as that might sound, sometimes I just listen to myself.
No, definitely. That makes sense. And then would you say that being an athlete has made you a better person overall?
Yeah, definitely. It makes you quite rounded. And yeah, there's loads of parts about athletics that like really put you into place and teach you a lesson really fast in front of a crowd of people. And there's other parts that make you feel like the biggest person in the room. And yeah, I think it's like there's always someone quicker, except for some people, except for Bolt. But like, yeah, there's always someone quicker, and it's always like you need to try your best. And I take that mentality into other parts of my life. Which, I mean, I can't imagine what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this, so I wouldn't be able to say. But yeah, like, in all parts of my life I try my best, and athletics is the only time where you have to try your best. I don't really get that in other parts of my life. But yeah, I can put that into all other areas.
Do you have any advice for a young person maybe thinking of getting into athletics, or somebody who's started on the journey but with a long way to go? Yeah.
I would say like explore like what you're interested in, explore what your body does, and like learn at the same time, like be curious about everything, try everything, but at the same time like learn to love what you're doing. As like a teenager you don't understand that, but like yeah, learn to love what you're doing, and also the body that you're doing it. Like in school, like I said before, I have a gangly little body. But in school, a lot of the time, that's not the cool thing to have. And like, there would be some comments on the start line of like, oh, he's too skinny, or blah, blah, blah. And there's one time I remember it was quite rude what the kids were saying behind me on the start line. And then, I mean, I beat them in the race anyway. But it's when you learn to love what, in my case, my skinny legs do. My skinny legs run really fast. And like, that's what's put me in this position. That's what's put me in a GB kit. You learn to love yourself, and you learn to love what your body can do. So yeah, for like kids that are getting into the sport, I think it's really important to like, yeah, learn to love what you do, and yeah, learn to love the body that you do it in, and enjoy it throughout the whole time.
I think that's a great note to end it on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. And thank you to everyone joining us at home, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.